And so I'd love to hear from you, Fiona, if you're there.
Yes, sorry, I just realised I've forgotten to press record. So I've now, and you were saying some really valuable things. So I'm now recording that. But if you miss if you're watching the recording, a lot of this is also on the Long COVID podcast. Now, I listened to that a couple of nights ago, thought it was fabulous. And one of the points you make, which I know we've done a whole chapter on in the book, is this need for rest, but also the difficulty that we have to rest. Because, I think there's two major points here. First of all, we are brought up to push through, to keep doing. This is almost like an internalized doing model that so many of us have embraced since childhood. But not only that, but the wider society views us as lazy if we go off and rest. And that also makes it quite difficult for us to think that it's okay to rest when we're ill. Now, interestingly, I've had ME for 15 years, but then recovered. But I had COVID 3 months ago, and it's taken me a good 3 months to recover. And it kind of brought everything back up for me. And one of the things was how difficult it is to rest. I struggled with it. And here I am, like yourself, teaching about rest, teaching about this need for taking time out. So I wonder if you could talk a bit about why we find it difficult to rest and why we need to maybe bring this concept of convalescence back into society and how the wider society views illness. Why are we feeling that we have to keep pushing through and rush back to work?
Well, I think one of the major factors as to why we as a society feel it's so hard to rest is because for so many of us, we might be unknowingly living in a chronic stress state. And this is because our nervous system
Nadyne, sorry, can you stop a minute? Somebody asked me to mute everybody and I muted you by accident, so I need to unmute you. Or can you unmute yourself? Sorry.
I've done it. Hello,
There you are.
everyone.
Yeah.
Chatting away
Okay.
to myself. One of those Zoom technical issues that
Sorry.
even after 4 years on Zoom still happens pretty much every time.
So can I
Welcome
just
back.
ask everyone else, can you just make sure you are muted? Because we were getting background sound then.
Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
everybody, for meeting yourselves. Yeah, so as I was saying, I think one of the real challenges in trying to recover from anything is that what we don't often realize is that we're living our lives in a chronic stress state. We're almost constantly in and out of the stress response. Now, this is fine if our body is not taxed and if our body is able to come back to that balanced state on a really regular basis. But for so many of us, that's just not happening. And the reason it might not be happening can be varied. We might be programmed kind of conditioned from a really young age, as Fiona was saying, to feel that taking time out, actually stopping, maybe even saying no to certain things means that we're being very selfish and that we should be constantly looking after other people, constantly trying to achieve and be productive. And so that just that sense of, well, I need to slow down, I need to give myself some time and space for some of us can be really, really challenging because we've learned that that in itself means that we're doing something almost wrong. And I think this is the thing that really connects everybody that I work with is that we usually find ourselves having been that person who is in a pattern of putting ourselves last, of not really knowing necessarily what our needs are. And that comes down to how we treat ourselves as people. And so often I work with people that find it really, really easy to give kindness and compassion and thought and care and consideration to everybody else in their lives. And they are usually the people that are achieving and doing really well, super successful in their professional lives, and the people that we think of as the real caring friends and relatives in their personal lives too. And yet, the place where they need that most is with themselves. And that is also the place where we find it the most challenging. So that art as well of self-compassion is often greatly lacking. And this can be for loads of reasons. We might find ourselves, whenever we do stop, kind of meeting ourselves and discovering that there are feelings and emotional things going on beneath the surface that are difficult, that are challenging to deal with. And that can impact our ability to want to be with ourselves, to come back to ourselves, to connect back to ourselves. And of course, the things that we're really, really good at is distracting ourselves from what is essentially pain. Now, that can be physical pain, that can be emotional pain, because ultimately our bodies are just experiencing pain, something that is painful to be with. And so because our lives kind of are set up for this also, our society celebrates it when we keep going and push on through and go into work when we're unwell. And we might have lots and lots of stressors and pressures externally that mean that we need to keep on working. It's not easy necessarily to take rest. And what does it truly mean for us when we do take rest? Because most of us don't really know what rest feels like. And from a personal point of view, I felt really uncomfortable resting for many, many years. I was absolutely that person who used to be crawling out of my skin when it came to shavasana in yoga. I used to literally want to just get up and run out of the room. And often I did. I used to say, I've got to go. I'm really sorry. And I've got to go. I'll go before the shavasana because I just couldn't be with myself in stillness. I could not let my body rest. Now, what's interesting about this is that for most of us, it's not that we're necessarily making that choice not to rest. It's that it can actually feel physiologically uncomfortable to rest because our bodies are in that chronic stress state where it's coursing with cortisol and adrenaline from being constantly in that stress response. And over time, if that's going on all the time, that becomes our normal and we start to feel quite kind of comfortable there. That becomes our home from home, our familiar place. And so if we come away from that place, our bodies react and it feels very uncomfortable. So really, the process and the journey towards recovery is one about discovering for ourselves what our patterns are, how our body responds differently in different circumstances, different life events, what might be underneath the surface. And this is why it can be so challenging to recover. And it really is very much a journey that I believe needs and requires support, because we can sometimes meet ourselves and find things that perhaps we've not dealt with from the past, perhaps issues are coming up that we might find painful and challenging. And really, this is also another reason why this condition specifically, and this is so lovely actually to hear now in the medical community that they are witnessing and observing this as a condition that requires a more holistic treatment plan, because currently there really isn't a treatment plan. And so actually taking a look at all aspects of our life and how that might be impacting our ability to rest is super important.
So can I just, yeah. So the book is, if you haven't got the book, it's very much practice-based. And can I just say, before I ask you the next and probably the final question, because then we're moving on to a practice, if you're watching this and you want to look away from the screen or lie down, please do so, because we both appreciate that listening too much can be tiring. But I just want to say that the book, if you haven't got it, is a lot of it is practice-based, but also the kind of theory that Nadyne's talking about, the nervous system, stress response, trauma, and also earlier she was mentioning the need for compassion. These are all topics we've covered in the book, but we've tried to give you practical ways in which you can address and help yourself. So we both understand, as Nadyne was saying, how hard it can be to rest for all the reasons she's giving, but we try and give you some solutions for this, because we both know that without a regulated nervous system and without periods of rest, the chances of healing are very much compromised. So my final question to you before we go on to a lovely breathing practice or a check-in practice, which I know you're going to share with us quite early on in our writing, you said that you would like to write a chapter for children with long COVID because your son had long COVID. And I remember at the time thinking, oh my goodness, how shocking that children are getting this. And then, of course, remembering that children also get ME. And it can be absolutely so challenging and difficult for parents. So here are you've had long COVID yourself, and now your son has long COVID. You wrote the most beautiful chapter with lots of fabulous practices. I just wonder if you can say a little bit about those practices and also about your experience as a parent of somebody with long COVID.
Thanks, Fiona. This kind of moves nicely on actually from what I was talking about, which is how do we connect back to ourselves? Now, as children intuitively and innately listen to their bodies. It's the only skill we really have when we're babies. How do we know when we're hungry? How do we know when a baby's hungry? They cry. How do we know when a baby's cold? They cry. So we have this innate ability from day one to listen to our body signals. We know the subtle signs of when we're tired. We know the subtle signs of when we're unwell. Now, having my child go through the experience of having COVID and then subsequently long COVID, as any parent out there will know, it's heartbreaking. If your child is ill, all you want to do is make them better. You just want them to be better. And so I was very passionate about including a chapter for children, but also because what's required really is support for the parents and the carers of these children, because it is so difficult. And anybody that's had this, that is experiencing fatigue will know it's really difficult to advocate for yourself, let alone advocate for your child. And the one thing that really stood out for me was how important it was to find somebody who understood this condition and wouldn't just dismiss it as, oh, tired all the time. And well, is it, they're probably just trying to get off of school. For children, this is something that's so important, is that we can advocate for them as their parents to explain this condition to schools, to also, funnily enough, to medical practitioners, because not everybody really understands it. And of course, we've had years and years and years, and I know the ME CFS communities, are very, very passionate about this, and rightly so. We've had years and years of people thinking that what's needed to increase energy is exercise. And so it's these types of things that I found myself having to educate other people on. And boy, did they choose the wrong mum, right? Because I'm incredibly passionate about this condition. And I know my stuff from years and years of research, from personal experience, from professional clinical work that I do. I know what this can be like. So that's why the chapter is in the book. It's very much based upon coming back to ourselves and listening and believing our own body signals, and of course those of our children. And it's been really interesting, this journey with my son, because we are very lucky. We have an amazing consultant pediatrician who really, really gets this condition and has been so helpful in guiding and supporting me to support and guide my son and advocate for him. And it's actually his guidance that helped me to form the basis of this chapter. He's endorsed the book as well, which has been a really lovely thing to see, because having the medical community truly understand this condition is part of the healing journey, because otherwise we find ourselves constantly battling against other people that don't understand. So that's one part of it. The other part that Fiona was talking about was, coming back to our bodies and that process of interoception, of really listening to the more subtle signs that our body gives us, so that we don't ignore it and we don't disconnect from it. Because often what we find is that we'll find ourselves in those situations where the body is screaming, or we're in a relapse, or we're crashing because we've been not listening and forcing ourselves to do things and expending energy. And I just want to mention something about the book practically. This book, I was well, Fiona and I had many discussions about how we wanted the book to look and what we wanted the book to look like. Um, and one of the things about this book that we were really, really adamant on was the size of the font. So even I can read it without my reading glasses, which is great. But this is really important to us that this book is nervous system friendly. We've broken down any theory into what we hope is really easily digestible information that is helpful and useful rather than just being words on the page, so that you can truly understand that, yes, this is evidence-based, but actually, what does that mean for me when I'm feeling this way? We wanted it to be very practical so that you have the practices that can hopefully help you. And we really advise people to not try and do everything all at once as well, to take it really slowly and gently. We say in the book, gentle is the only way. And that is something that is very, very important, that you go super gently with yourself if you're making any changes. And with that in mind, I would like to start our little mini retreat with a little check-in practice so that for those of you who perhaps...
Can I just stop you before we do that? We are going to do the check-in practice with you. I'm going to put the discount code into the chat box now. So if you would like to write that down, that's the discount code for 25% off the book. So that's there. And also, before we go into Nadyne's check-in practice, if anyone's got any questions, you might like to type them in the chat box now. So just give you 2 or 3 minutes to write down the code or to write in any questions for our Q&A session after Nadyne's practice.
Just to say as well, Fiona, I don't know if you would mind doing this, but the discount code for the book is only can only be used if you're ordering the book direct from Singing Dragon, the publishers of the book. So you might want to put the link to the book via Singing Dragon into the chat as well.
Yeah,
Fiona.
good sort of thinking. So
there.
While you're when you're doing the practice, I will just get the link up on my computer and then I can post it in.
Just to say that, being on screen, we recognize this is really, really tiring for our nervous systems. We might not recognize that kind of intellectually that it's tiring. It's only after we've been on screen or on our phones for a long period of time that you might find yourself feeling really, really fatigued. And often this is because automatically our breathing, our nervous system is recognizing that we are distracted by what's on our screens. And we're having to listen intently, or we're having to look at words on screens or faces on screens. And so often as well, we're looking at, if we're working online, we're looking at emails, we're waiting for the next email or deadline to come in. And if you're looking and scrolling through social media, you're kind of looking subconsciously for these kind of notifications coming up, this kind of little dopamine bursts that we get when we're scrolling through social media. So my advice would be, if you don't want to look at the screen, please don't. Don't feel that you have to. Feel free to be laying down, close your eyes, however you want to be. And specifically for this practice that I'm going to take you through, I would advise getting as comfortable as you possibly can in the space that you're in. And just as a reminder that comfort is whatever it is for you. So there's no right way to rest. And there's no right way to relax. So if you need to move at any time, please feel free to. So often when I work with people, or if I've been teaching yoga, if I'm taking a yoga therapy class, which I do in acute mental health services, people will say, am I doing this right? And I'll say, Does it feel okay for you? That's the only right way. So I really want you to keep that in mind, that the only right way to be is whatever feels most comfortable for you. And with that same concept in mind, if you want to close your eyes, please do. But if you don't, that's fine as well. Feel free to keep your eyes open, because this check-in practice is an invitation to really become aware of your inner world. So the invitation to close eyes can be useful, removing that sense of sight and of the world going on around you, but it's not essential. So I invite you to get as comfy as you can as we practice this opportunity to check in with ourselves. And especially when we're experiencing fatigue or any of the other symptoms of long COVID, we can find ourselves really disconnecting from ourselves. And I'm going to make an assumption that there might have been many times in your life when you've ignored yourself, ignored your body, perhaps pushed on through those whispers and more subtle signs that you needed to rest and slow down and take a break. And there can be so many reasons why we might have learned to do this. But I bet that you've been able to check in with other people. And so this is going to be your opportunity to check in with yourself, to see how you're doing, to give yourself the same care and consideration as we give and extend to other people. And just a reminder, through this opportunity to check in with ourselves, we might become aware of resistance. And this in itself is all part of the process of becoming more aware. So try to meet yourself with curiosity. Allow yourself to witness and observe without judgment whatever it is that arises for you today as we travel through this process of checking in. And we're going to ask ourselves some reflexive questions for which there's no right or wrong answer. And so silently to yourself, you might wish to repeat in your mind the following questions, reminding yourself there's only what is as we allow ourselves to notice whatever arises in the moment. And so we begin just by noticing your feet in contact with the ground or the surface that you're on. Just reminding yourself of wherever you are in the space around you, shifting, getting comfortable. And at any time through this practice, if anything feels uncomfortable, please bring your attention back to that sensation of your feet in contact with the ground. So let's remind ourselves of this mind-body connection, just giving our toes a little wiggle. And then letting your body settle back into that space of just being with yourself. And so we begin this check-in practice with awareness of our physical body. Just asking ourselves and noticing, how is it to be in this body today? And I invite you to become really aware of how your body feels. And remember, if this is difficult or challenging today, just being aware of that is all part of the process. And so you might be noticing perhaps parts of the body that feel achy, uncomfortable. You might be noticing sensations, tightness, tension. And we often only notice our bodies when there's pain or discomfort, when our bodies aren't able to do the things we want them to do. And you might have neglected your body or ignored it, not listening to the whispers. So today I invite you to become aware of a part of your body that feels good, just as it is right now. Perhaps a part that's feeling rested. Perhaps a part that's feeling more at ease today. Perhaps a part of your body that meets the ground or the surface below you with a sense of ease. And that might just be a small part. And I now invite you to imagine the back of your body, noticing how it meets the ground. And in your imagination, if you can, just begin to draw a line from the tailbone all the way up the spine, imagining that you could create some more space for yourself in this way. And we rest our attention now on the crown of the head, this space that we call the mind. And I invite you to check in with your mind, noticing thoughts, feelings, emotions, whatever's going on in there right now. No need to clear the mind. We're just encouraging some awareness of what is. And this place we call mind is often the busy place. Thoughts darting around. So I invite you to observe, just observing the thoughts, maybe noticing if they're fast or slow. Perhaps it's quite foggy. Maybe it's clear today. So in observing our thoughts and just inviting awareness of them, we can begin to just notice, like we notice the weather through the window each day. My invitation now is for you to bring your attention to your energy, asking yourself, how's my energy today? What does that mean for me? Now, it can mean many things. Perhaps you're feeling tired, lethargic, agitated. Perhaps there's a sense of calm. I invite you to notice if there's a quality to this energy. For some of us, there might be a colour, or perhaps the energy takes on a shape. Just allow yourself to notice. You might begin to notice emotions attached to that sensation of energy. I'm sure we all know the energy of anger, the energy of joy. So what do you notice about your energy today? Just as it is. As we begin to notice changes to our energy each day, we can better manage the way that we use this energy. We can better observe how people, places, situations in our life impact and change how we feel energetically. And so now we bring our awareness to the breath being the foundation of our health and well-being, a place that can transform how we feel physically, emotionally, and energetically. So beginning now, just to become aware of your next inhale and exhale. And I invite you to notice the temperature of the air as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Invite the noticing of the cooler air as you inhale and perhaps the warmer air as you exhale. Taking a moment just to breathe and reminding yourself that if at any time there's a sense of discomfort, please come back to that sensation of your feet on the ground. And now we're going to invite the noticing of what part of our body is moving most today as we breathe. And you might like to place a hand on the belly space if you wish to. But I invite you to really tune into your body. Notice the movements, perhaps the rise and fall of the chest, perhaps the shoulders moving. Perhaps you're sensing the back of the body expanding with each inhale, releasing with each exhale. So take a moment to observe the movement of the body as you breathe, with no need to change anything. Just notice. And now we're going to begin to bring some awareness to the speed of the breath, noticing the rhythm of our breathing. And perhaps it's a fast breath today. Or maybe it's a slow breath today. Notice the quality of each breath, whether there's a smooth quality to your breathing, or perhaps today it feels a little ragged, a little stepped. There might be pauses between the inhale and exhale. So just allow yourself to notice. And my invitation to you is to become an explorer of the breath, to begin to explore what it might be like to change the breath. And I invite you to do this as gently as possible, knowing that at any time you can come back to your normal breathing and noticing the feet in contact with the ground. So I invite you to encourage the breath to become a little slower, perhaps a little lower, as if you could breathe towards your belly space, so that each time you inhale, the belly rises, and each time you exhale, there's a sense of release. Reminding yourself that each day is different. And if this isn't happening for you today, that's fine. We just plant the seed of an idea that it might happen tomorrow. And so the breath becomes a little slower and a little lower. That gentle softening and rise of the belly with each inhale. And perhaps a sense of release from the belly with each exhale. I invite you to imagine the breath becoming as smooth as silk, allowing the quality of each breath to be super gentle, smoothing the inhale and allowing the exhale. Reminding yourself to become curious and non-judgmental, allowing of each awareness as it arises and coming back to the breath each time. Breathing in, allowing the belly to rise. Breathing out, allowing the belly to release. Taking a few more of these breaths as if you could breathe all the way down to that hand on your belly. Reminding yourself there's no wrong or right way. It is just as it is each day. And slowly and gently, we're going to begin to come back into our day. And I invite you to do this as carefully and gently as you can. beginning just to bring your awareness back to the toes, giving your toes a little wiggle, inviting an awareness of the parts of the body that wish to move first. And it may just be that you want to stay where you are, and that's fine too. Or it might be that you need to stretch or move in a certain way as you slowly and gently come back into your day. So whenever you're ready, taking your time, just allowing yourself to come back into the space. And if your eyes have been closed, you can leave them closed or gently blink them open. And I'm always interested to hear from people if they find this practice of checking in tricky, challenging. Maybe there's certain awarenesses that have come up during that practice, because so often we go through our days not really necessarily noticing ourselves, but also perhaps only noticing when things aren't going as we wish for them to go. And actually, every day is different. And especially with this condition of long COVID, each day there's subtle signs. And it can be hard to miss them because we might have this overall general feeling of being very unwell, which is, of course, absolutely understandable. But when we really get to know ourselves, and we talk about this in the book, when we really get to know how we're feeling in those different ways, physically, emotionally, energetically, we can start to really see some patterns. And this can help us to better inform ourselves and empower ourselves towards recovery. So I'll be really interested to hear from people. Perhaps you may have done something similar like this. You may be pacing, of course, and noticing your energy levels. So yeah, if anybody wants to pop anything in the chat, we can see what people are saying, or you're very welcome to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Nadyne. Can I just say that was a really beautiful practice, and I feel personally so much better after that, so thank you. There are a few questions already in the chat box, but please do add more if you've got them, and we will both answer them as best we can. So the first question, actually somebody's asked about the table of contents. So Nadyne, I wonder if would you like, or shall I just read out what we cover?
Got it right here, Fiona. So,
okay.
So chapter 1 is all about stress and how we might be unknowingly living in a constant stress state, as I was talking about earlier. It talks about how stress impacts the body and how it most of all impacts our health and our ability to recover. And then chapter 2 is about trauma. Now, for many of us, trauma has been something that we might have experienced and survived in many different ways. Now, we are absolutely not saying that trauma is the reason why people can't recover, but what we do know is that it does impact our ability to recover and our ability to be on this healing journey without support, because it can be really, really difficult when we might have to come away from the coping tools that we might have been using in our lives, such as exercising, such as perhaps overworking, that we might have been using to distract ourselves. So that's chapter 2. Chapter 3, we talk about breathing and how we can access our nervous system. And you just had a little snippet of that there. And it's a really, really important aspect to the recovery journey. And what for many people happens is that they kind of go into a breathing practice in the same way we might have faced many things in our lives, which is like, I've got to get this right, I've got to do it, and I hold my hands up. I was like that as well, in that real like doing mode. I've got to do this. And actually what learning to breathe effectively for our health is all about, is actually stripping everything back and coming back to a really gentle way of being with ourselves. And the breath is probably our easiest tool to access our nervous system. So chapters 3 and 4 are all about breathing for recovery. Chapter 5 is talking about energy through pranayama. And chapter 6 is talking about the chakras, our energy systems, our energy centers of the body, and 7 as well. Chapter 8 is all about resting and relaxation for recovery, this art that we were talking about earlier in our on the call today. Chapter 9 is about the wisdom of the body, listening to our inner wisdom, interoceptive skills that we might have come away from, and how we come back to that reconnection of mind and body. Chapter 10, the importance of self-compassion. So turning that mirror back towards ourselves, what's that like? How hard can that be, right? Easy. Sounds nice and easy, doesn't it? Chapter 11, when to move and when to pace. So we very much realize that, exercise for most people recovering from long COVID can be very, very detrimental, can put us into that cycle of relapse and recovery. However, we might want to look at redefining what we think about exercise. And this chapter is all about how we can move more mindfully in a way that supports our bodies as we recover. And chapter 12 is the chapter on children, advocating for children. There's some really beautiful practices specific for children. However, what's really important is that the whole book, regardless of chapter 12 being kind of labeled as, well, this is the children's chapter, all of the practices are suitable because they're super, super gentle. Many of them are quite creative based practices as well. And as we probably know, as all adults, we need that time to kind of allow ourselves to get back into that play, really, allowing ourselves to find the joy through something that feels good for our bodies. So that is the kind of contents. I think it's also on Amazon as well. You can see the table of contents in the images on the book. And please put some more questions in the chat. The book.
And in fact,
yeah.
Thank you so much. Just to say, somebody's Izzy and a couple of you have said that the code that we've given isn't working. So I'm really sorry about that because that was the code the publisher gave us. But I will be checking with them first thing tomorrow. I have suggested, can you try it again, but without the percentage sign, although that was what they gave us. We do know that the 20% one works. So I've also put that in which is BRR20SD. We do know that works because people have been using that. But I have put our details. Somebody asked where you can contact us. So I put Nadyne's website and my website on there. And then there's a few more questions. So I'm going to answer one question, and also Nadyne might want to add to that. So one of the questions was from Anne. Do you have any advice on how to break the habit of reaching for my phone as soon as there's a lull? Well, Anne, I think we all have that problem. And in fact, the writer Johann Hari has just written a book on that very problem, because phones are made to be addictive. So my personal trick I use, if it's a trick, is I actually don't take my phone out with me, or I kind of hide it, as it were. So I'm just really aware. And also at the moment I'm on Instagram because of the book, but I do try and come off social media and have months away from social media and from scrolling, because I'm very aware. We actually again talk about this in the book, that phones can create dopamine and all kinds of chemicals which give us a lift, but then when we come away from it, those hormones drop again and we can actually have depression even. So Nadyne, I don't know if you'd like to say a bit more about how to come away from the addiction of phone. Yeah,
cool. So as a breathing therapist as well, I often end up speaking with people and exploring the amount of time that we spend on screen and the impact of that screen time on our breathing. And what many people don't realize is that we can so quickly go into this state of tech apnea, it's called, when our breathing rhythms change really significantly. We may not know because, of course, we're breathing all day, every day, unconsciously. It's an automatic process in the body. And until we actually tune in and become more consciously aware of our breath, we won't necessarily realize when we've gone into this apnea state where we're breathing in a very shallow way, or perhaps even speeding up the breath is speeding up because something exciting is happening, and we're looking for something, or we're waiting for a deadline or an email to come through, and we're tapping away and not really knowing that our breathing rhythm has changed. So my advice for the phone is, look, let's face it, right? Our phones are, as Fiona said, it's a really lovely idea. I take weeks at a time out during the year where I don't have my phone at all. I go away on retreat and I get rid of my phone completely. And when it comes back to me, it's like, but I'm soon plunged back in, as we all are, because we've got these little mini computers and we like to stay connected. And especially when we're not feeling well, it can be our lifeline to the outside world. So I absolutely understand how vital having that connection is. However, how can we make it better for our bodies? And my tip for people that I'm working with is to take a little breathing micro break. So to set an alarm, either on your phone, a little notification, or if you have a watch attached to your phone, whatever you do, even if it's just 1 minute, and this is where I start with people, take 1 minute out for every hour that you're on your phone. Now, I know that sounds like, well, that's a long period of time, but so many of us will find that we lose ourselves. We go down the rabbit hole of wherever we're looking at, whatever we're looking at. But you can do this after any period of time. Just take a minute away, close your eyes if you can, if that feels okay, and just placing a hand on the belly, as we did earlier in the check-in practice, and just breathing and becoming really consciously aware, even if it's just of the temperature of your breath, coming in through the nose, out through the nose, noticing your breathing, spending 1 minute slowing the breath down. There's some other lovely practices in the book as well, specifically some lovely mindfulness-based activities connected to the breath that can be done if you're at work, working from home, if you're watching the TV, if you're on a screen of some sort. And it's all about how can we, when we've spent periods of time disconnected from ourselves, which is exactly what we're doing when we are on screens, coming back to ourselves. So we need to allow ourselves, give ourselves permission to take those little micro breaks throughout the day, because that will then have a big impact in how we can recover from what is essentially an energy depleting activity of the phone. So that's my advice for screen time. It's get rid of the phone if you can, in terms of throughout the day. Try not to have it with you all the time, but also recognize that, this is our lifeline for some of us. This is our way to connect with other people, work, etc. And so acknowledging that, but finding a way to actually help ourselves to recover from that screen time can be really, really useful.
Before we move on to another practice, there's going to be one more question, which is Christine's asked, is there another word for pace? And I thought that was quite an interesting question, because those of us who've had or have fatigue-based conditions like ME or long COVID are always being told to pace, and that, I still to this day believe it absolutely is one of the ways to work towards recovery. But I'm kind of asking you this on the hoof a bit, Nadyne. Have you got another word for pace?
I don't. I know I used the word pace this morning, but
Me
I don't
too.
generally tend to use the word pace. I talk about checking in with yourself and just kind of acknowledging where you're at. So I think it's really part of a journey towards getting to know yourself better, and that almost negates the word pace in a way, because if you're checking in with yourself daily, kind of understanding where you're at energetically, physically. But yeah, that's a lovely idea. Yeah, personal tempo. I love that. Yeah,
Oh
that's.
yeah, that's beautiful. Yes.
They
Anybody
also
else got any
talk
ideas?
about,
Really nice.
our body budget, which is something that I learned from the neuroscientist Lisa Feldman Barrett in her book. I think it's called 7.5 Lessons About the Brain. Kind of like, where's my budget at today? How much have I got that I can spend? Or
What's in
do
my bank account?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's in my bank account today? So I know that some people use that analogy too. The body battery, yeah, yeah, but it's important to acknowledge that it isn't just physical. And we talk about this in the book, it isn't just about physical activities that drain our energy. And somebody said the book seems exhausting. And, Fiona and I talked about how we wanted the book to look, what we wanted the book to feel like. We wanted it to be a bigger book because it's easier to read. We didn't want it to be a small, tiny book with tiny font. But also the practices are going to be available as an audiobook and various courses that Fiona and I are running as well, so you can come and actually have the practices there for you rather than having to read the practices. It's not a heavy book. No, I think there's another question. It's really not a heavy book. It's a larger book for all those reasons that I just spoke about, but it's not a heavy book.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just going to say, I'm really sorry. Part of the reason of coming today was to give you the 25% discount code, and a couple of you are saying it's not working. And we really sorry about that. And I will get onto the publisher straight away tomorrow. So what I'm going to suggest now, we're going to do another mini retreat practice, but we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break. But meanwhile, if you like to put if you want to stay in touch, or you want that discount code, or you would like to be on either my mailing list or Nadyne's mailing list, I put our websites in the chat. Please do put your email in the chat just while we go for a break, and we'll then make a note of that and get back to you. And then we will be doing a practice for our mini retreat in about 5 minutes. So do leave your cameras on. Well, I mean, you can turn your camera off, but I mean, stay on the Zoom call, and we'll see you in about 5 minutes. Okay, thank you. we're coming back now.
Welcome back, everybody.
So again, just apologies that the code we've been given by the publisher isn't working for the 25%. If you can leave your emails in the chat box, or if you want to be on either of our mailing lists, then please do so. What we're going to do now is I'm going to do a practice from the book. And actually, something that we haven't covered today in the book is that we also write about the chakras, because they can be very useful in terms of healing. So the one that I'm going to do with you now is for the heart chakra. So this is actually a seated practice, but we always give you the option to be able to lie down. So just like to invite you to come either to lying or sitting. And if you are sitting, it's helpful to be in a chair. And if necessary, you might like to place a book or a block under your feet, a cushion behind your back. And if you're lying, you might like to lie with the knees bent and something under your head. So I'll just give you a moment or two to get into that position. We're going to be doing a seated cat, which is why I've suggested that you start from sitting, but we can also modify this and do it from lying. So practice is all about opening the heart. So take a moment or two just to settle. And just tune in to how you're feeling now, emotionally, energetically, mentally, and physically. And take a moment or two to tune into your breath. And see if you can be curious about this. So we're not being judgmental, we're just exploring how we are in this present moment, not resisting anything, just being curious. And then if you can, just drop your awareness to your heart. And then just gently roll your shoulders a few times. If you're lying, you can do this from lying as well as from sitting. And if we're overactivated or if we're in a stress response, our upper body might be quite tight. So it's nice just to release the shoulders, just have a sense of them softening each time you roll them. And you might like to just slowly either roll your head from side to side a few times, or take one ear down to the shoulder and then center the head and then back the other way. So just observe how your neck's feeling, how your shoulders are feeling, and take some movements to explore and make that area comfortable. And then just gently draw the shoulders together and release. You might like to do this with the breath, so breathing in, draw the shoulders together, breathing out through the mouth, release. Just try softening. And now take your hands to your heart. So you can either have one hand on top of the other, or the hands together in prayer mudra. And just see if you can drop your awareness to your heart. You might like to have your eyes closed if you're comfortable to do so. And see if there's a message there from your heart. And maybe there's nothing, but that's fine too. Just see if you can begin to pay attention. So we're going to do a little bit of chanting now. Now, this is optional. You don't have to chant if you don't want to. So I'm going to give you the Sanskrit seed mantra for the heart, but you can also do this in English if you want. So we'll do this as call and response, but I'd like you to think of chanting softly to your heart like a lullaby. So I'm going to chant Om Yam Yam Yam. But if you want, you can chant Om Love 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 on the exhalation, or you don't need to chant at all if you prefer just to continue to breathe. So we're going to do this 3 times. I'll do it to you, and then you do it to your heart. You breathe in as I chant. Om Yam Yam Yam. Om Yam Yam Yam. Om Yam Yam Yam. And when you've chanted, or if you have been chanting, just take a moment or two to feel the stillness created by the mantra. See if you can drop into that stillness. And then keep the left hand flat on the heart. Take the right hand to the belly. And we're going to practice breathing into the lower hand if that's comfortable. So if at any time it doesn't feel right, just return to your normal breathing rhythm. But if you're able to, you're going to breathe softly into the lower hand, breathing through the nose if you can, thinking of the breath as being slow and low. And then returning to your normal breathing rhythm, we're going to take that hand that's on the belly back to the heart. We're going to take the hands together on the heart, but we're going to soften them. So we've got the space between the palms into what's known as Anjali Mudra. So just rest with the hands in Anjali Mudra at the heart. And then we're going to do the hugging breath. So we're going to breathe in and open the arms out wide like a cross, just below shoulder level. On the out breath, we're going to hug ourselves, crossing the arms softly around the chest, one hand to opposite shoulder. And then inhaling, opening again, exhaling, crossing them the other way. So just do this a few times in your own breathing rhythm. Don't tire yourself. Keep listening in to what feels right for you. But feel each time you hug yourself that you are nourishing and nurturing yourself. So just a few times in your own breathing rhythm. And then just pause with the hands on the shoulders, elbows resting on the heart. This actually helps the breath to be a little bit lower down, which is what we want for healthy functional breathing. And then just stroke down the arms, which is actually easier if you're sitting, but just give yourself some nice strokes, shoulder down to the wrist. Feel again this sense of nurturing yourself. And then rest the hands either on your knees if you're sitting or beside you if you're lying. We're now going to practice a cat. As I said, you can do this from lying just by drawing the shoulder blades together. So we're going to move with the breath if we can. We're going to breathe in and lift the heart, rolling the shoulders together. Exhale. You might like to take the navel softly to the spine as you release. So just do a few movements like that, thinking of opening the heart on the in-breath, releasing on the out-breath. So maybe up to 5 times. And then make the one you are doing the last, and then just relax from sitting or lying. And thinking about Nadyne's check-in practice, which we did in earlier, just check in. How am I? Just observe how you are mentally, physically, emotionally, without judgment, with curiosity. Just allowing everything to become a little more relaxed, softer, and more still. And then we're going to just visualize the breath now. So visualize on the in-breath that you are breathing in light. And on the out-breath, just direct that to wherever you feel in your system you need that light today. And the ancient yogis said that the movement of prana is partly to do with the mind. This is very powerful. Breathing in light, prana is a form of light. Breathing out, visualizing that we're sending healing nourishment to wherever we feel we need it. And then come back to normal breathing. And still with your eyes closed, if that's comfortable for you, I'd like you to imagine a circle of loved ones around you, surrounding you. Now you can place anybody you would like in your circle. So these might be friends, relatives, teachers, pets. That's always a popular one. You've got a beloved pet you might like to place in your circle, or inspirational figures, even somebody you might not actually have met, but somebody you feel in your life, maybe that you've read about or is actually in your life that has offered you support. So just visualize these in a circle around you. And visualize that they are sending you well-being. And love, good wishes. And just see if you can bathe in this sense of compassion, unconditional understanding, unconditional love. And visualize you're breathing this well-being in through your heart, absorbing love into your whole being. And also visualize that you are inhaling and exhaling through the heart. And you might like to contemplate that although you are visualizing this love and compassion coming from your circle of care, this love is not separate from you. That when you become still, the mind becomes quiet. There is also such a thing as love and self-compassion. We can begin to connect with this as we begin to open the heart. And then begin to bring yourself back into your body. Just become aware of where you're touching your support. Feet on the floor, your hips. And just become aware of your surroundings and your place in your space. Being aware of any sounds you can hear. And then when you're ready, you might like to just make small movements with your fingers or toes, or if you feel like making bigger movements, stretching, please do so. When you're ready, open your eyes. We can palm the eyes, we can just rub the hands together and then have the palms softly over the eyes, fingers coming into the hairline, opening and closing the eyes into the palms, and the warmth of the palms helps the eyes to relax and soften. And when you're ready, release the hands. And just take a moment or two to look around your space to bring yourself back into the here and now. Just to say, that was a practice I took from the heart chakra section of the book. I actually made it shorter because I realized that we were going to run out of time. So there's quite a nice sequence in there where you can also lie on your front, which is something we know people with breathing problems actually find quite comfortable. But I think, are there any more questions? Or Nadyne, do you have any comments before we begin to wind up the meeting?
Yeah. Well, just to say that was really beautiful practice, Fiona. Thank you.
Thank you.
A couple of people have mentioned in the chat, it's really common to find that it's at these points in our life that when we slow down, when we're maybe forced to slow down by illness, that we recognize just how much we've been holding, just how much we've been doing, just how much we might have been suffering, perhaps in silence, and not really supporting ourselves or being supported by others because we might have been the supporters. And I think so many, a few people have mentioned, and I know from my own work, that so often we are the carers of others. And actually what this book really has a very strong message throughout about is how important it is, but also how challenging it can be to really become our own best friends, to look after ourselves in that way that we so easily look after others. We give away our energy so easily, and yet we find it so difficult because, as some people have recognized through these practices today, stuff comes up. It can be really hard to hold these feelings, and it can feel quite significant when we slow down, that we start to really understand, oh God, I've been holding so much in. And so it's really beautiful to see that some people have had this experience this morning. And I want to thank you for sharing that, because this is why Fiona and I do the work that we do, and why we're so very, very passionate about this condition specifically, but supporting people that are going through these symptoms and experiencing the challenge and of becoming a rebellious rester. So thank you so much, all of you, for coming to join us. It's been really lovely to see some known faces and to see some unknown faces. And I've been collecting all the email addresses. Again, to reiterate, huge apologies about the discount code. We will be, with kindness, arguing.
No, not arguing, we're gently.
We should take this with kindness to the publishers and
Yes.
find out what's going on and how we can remedy this straight away.
Yeah, so thank you all, and thank you, as Nadyne said, that some of you have shared that you had a release. Just to say, if you have tears, that's always an amazing release, because you're releasing cortisol. So we always see that as something really healthy. So thank you all. Somebody was asking about courses. Just to say that you would find that on our websites. I'm actually taking some time out for, apart from my Monday classes, but we'll be posting stuff up on my website, and so will Nadyne. So just keep regularly checking in with our websites or be on our newsletters, and we'll let you know. But yeah, lots of love to you all. Thank you so much for being here. And we're looking forward to maybe connecting with you at different times. I'd also like to say big thank you. There's a couple I see with Sarah and Lorraine from my own yoga therapy course. Bless you. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And yeah, lots of love. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Enjoy your Sunday. Don't get blown away if you're in the UK.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. So if you would like to leave the meeting, I might stay on a bit with you, Nadyne, just to, okay. So, but goodbye to the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Beautiful.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Just us. Can you hear me?
I think there's still a few people on the call.
I haven't got anyone. Oh, yes. No, sorry, there are. Yeah, I'll just. You're right.
Just collecting email addresses.
Fiona. Oh, thanks. I'm just taking people out in a kind way, of course.
Yeah. Not with a gun.
No. I think people have fallen asleep.
That's good news.
Right, just us. Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming back. Hold on.
Actually, I'm going to take my earplugs.
Are you okay?
Yeah. I think that went well, don't you?
I think it went really nicely. Yeah. I think people. Yeah.
I said I think that went well. Do you?
Yeah, I think people enjoyed it.
I think that went even better than I hoped. I'm sorry about things like I forgot to record until about 5 minutes in, and then I muted you, but it was only for 30 seconds. But apart from that,
it's all right. These things happen. Technical problems always happen. It's all good.
But
I'm going to email you over all the emails that
Oh,
I've just
bless
collected
you.
in the
Thank
chat.
you. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Um,
And I mean,
Are you
shall
fine
I?
now for your health? Are you okay? I saw your email yesterday.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm just going to take, I mean, as I said, I just need to take.
Fiona, do you want us to just not press record now? Do you want to stop
Oh, yeah.
recording?